Burning desert, a child's desperate cry. An Apache woman tied to a rock waiting to die. One cowboy's single decision changes everything. This isn't just a rescue story. It's a story of courage, humanity, and a stand that rewrites fate. Why did he cut the ropes? What did it cost him? And how did it change all their lives? Watch till the end. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. The cowboy rode with steady focus as the sun slowly leaned westward, his horse moving carefully across the rough desert ground. The Apache woman sat behind him, weak but upright, holding her daughter close. Every movement caused pain, yet she refused to complain. Her eyes stayed alert, scanning the land, measuring the man who had cut her free. Trust did not come easily to her. She had been betrayed before, left to die under the open sky. Still, the feel of water on her lips and the child's quiet breathing against her chest reminded her that this moment was different. The cowboy said little, but his silence was not cold. It was the silence of someone who understood suffering and chose action over words. They reached a narrow canyon where the air cooled slightly. The cowboy stopped near a cluster of cottonwood trees and helped the woman dismount. He laid a blanket on the ground and guided her to sit. The child drank eagerly from his canteen, then offered it back to her mother with shaking hands. The woman drank slowly, each swallow a victory against death. The cowboy kept watch, scanning the ridges for movement. He knew this land well. Leaving someone tied in the sun meant enemies were nearby. Whoever had done this might return. He rested a hand near his revolver, not eager for violence, but ready if it came. The woman finally spoke again, her voice low but steady. She told him her name and why she had been punished. Her people were divided. Some believed surrender was survival. Others believed resistance was honor. She had chosen only one thing, her child. When armed men demanded obedience and threatened the girl, she fought back. They could not break her spirit, so they made an example of her. The cowboy listened without interruption. He had seen men use power to crush the weak. He had also seen how cruelty created more bloodshed. Her story did not surprise him, but it hardened his resolve. As the heat eased, they continued toward his ranch. The land slowly changed from open desert to rolling scrub and fence lines. The ranch house appeared modest but solid, built by hands that valued endurance over comfort. The cowboy helped them inside and lit a lantern as dusk fell. He prepared simple food, beans, bread, dried meat. The child ate first, glancing up with cautious curiosity. The woman watched closely, ready to pull her daughter back if danger appeared. None did. The cowboy ate last, as if it were natural to place them first. That small act spoke louder than any promise. That night the woman barely slept. Every sound made her tense. She remembered the rope cutting into her wrists, the sun burning her skin, the certainty that no one was coming. She touched her wrists now, still raw, and breathed through the pain. Across the room, the cowboy sat in a chair, hat pulled low, rifle resting nearby. He did not lie down. He chose to stand guard. When she realized this, something inside her shifted, not trust yet, but acknowledgement. He was not pretending to be kind. He was being kind. Morning brought new challenges. A rider appeared near the fence line, then another. The cowboy stepped outside, calm but alert. The woman watched through a window, ready to flee if needed. The men were not strangers to him. They spoke briefly, their voices tense. When the riders left, the cowboy returned with a tight expression. He explained that word was spreading. Someone was asking questions about an escaped Apache woman and a child. The woman's jaw tightened. She had known peace would be brief. Running had been survival before. But now her child had slept safely, eaten fully. She did not want to return to endless fear. The cowboy made a choice. He said no one would take them by force from his land. He knew the risks. Harboring them could bring trouble, maybe worse. But he had already crossed that line the moment he cut the ropes. He offered her a role on the ranch, not as a servant, not as property, but as someone earning her place. She understood the difference immediately. Dignity mattered to her as much as safety. She agreed not as a favor, but as a partnership. Days passed. The woman regained strength. She helped with cooking, mending, caring for animals. She worked with quiet efficiency, never wasting movement. The cowboy noticed how she studied everything, learning quickly. The child followed him everywhere, asking questions, laughing more freely with each sunrise. Danger did not vanish, but it stayed at the edges. The land itself seemed to watch them, waiting to see what they would become together. One afternoon, shots echoed in the distance. The woman froze, instinct screaming at her to hide. The cowboy mounted his horse and told her to take the child inside. He rode out alone. Hours stretched painfully long. Memories flooded her mind, men who never returned, promises broken by gunfire. When the cowboy finally came back, dust-covered but unhurt, relief hit her like rain on dry earth. He said it was a warning, nothing more, but his eyes said he knew it would not be the last. That night, they spoke openly for the first time, not about survival but about belief. The woman spoke of her people, their stories, their respect for the land. The cowboy spoke of loss, of a family buried far from here, of why he chose a lonely ranch instead of a town. They did not agree on everything. They did not need to. What mattered was that neither tried to dominate the other. Respect grew quietly like roots underground. When trouble finally came, it came hard. Men rode in with demands and threats. The woman stood beside the cowboy, her daughter behind her. She did not bow her head. The cowboy did not step aside. Words were exchanged, then silence. In that silence, lines were drawn. The men left, knowing the cost would be high. The woman realized something then. Being untied from the rock had saved her body. Standing here unbroken saved her future. From that day on, the ranch was no longer just a refuge. It was a stand. The woman was no longer just someone rescued. She was someone who chose to stay and fight in her own way. And the child, who once ran barefoot through the desert begging for mercy, grew up knowing that courage could come from unlikely places, and that sometimes a single act of humanity could change the direction of many lives. The tension after that confrontation did not fade quickly. For days, the land felt watchful, as if the wind itself carried rumors. The woman sensed it too. She woke before dawn, helping quietly, teaching her daughter small tasks so the child would feel useful instead of afraid. The cowboy reinforced fences, checked his rifle, and rode the perimeter more often. They spoke less, but understanding deepened. Silence between them was no longer suspicion. It was preparation. Both knew that peace on the frontier was never permanent. It was borrowed time, earned only by those willing to defend it without losing themselves. One evening, smoke rose on the far horizon. The woman recognized the signal instantly. It was not a campfire. It was a warning. Her shoulders stiffened and the old instincts surged back. She told the cowboy what it meant, men gathering, measuring strength, deciding whether fear would win. He did not argue or doubt her knowledge. He trusted it. Together they planned not to run, but to endure. He sent the child to a hidden cellar beneath the barn with food and water. The woman stayed above ground by choice. This land had given her shelter. She would not hide while others faced danger. When the riders came, they came at dusk, their figures dark against the burning sky. They demanded surrender, claiming authority, law, and consequence. The cowboy answered calmly, his voice steady. He said no one here was property, and no injustice would be corrected by another injustice. The woman stood beside him, visible, unbound, unafraid. Her presence changed the balance. This was no longer a lone rancher defying them. This was a shared stand. The men hesitated. Violence was possible, but it would not be clean, and it would not be forgotten. A single shot cracked the air, striking dirt near the fence. The woman flinched but did not retreat. The cowboy raised his rifle, not firing, only signaling readiness. The standoff stretched painfully long. Finally, the riders withdrew, cursing promises into the dust. Victory felt hollow. The woman knew this was not an end, only a turning point. She told the cowboy plainly, if they stayed alone, the threat would return stronger. He agreed. Survival would now require community, not isolation. That night, they made another choice, harder than any before. In the following weeks, they reached out to neighboring ranchers, traders, and families who lived quietly between loyalties. The woman spoke when needed, explaining not as a plea, but as truth. She described what happened when power went unchallenged. Some turned away, others listened. A few remembered their own losses and nodded. Slowly, a fragile network formed. Not an army, but an understanding. The frontier had always demanded cooperation, disguised as independence. This time it was spoken aloud. The woman watched as the child played freely among others for the first time. That sight alone was worth the risk. The woman's role changed as trust grew. She became a voice people sought, not because of fear, but because of clarity. She did not speak often, but when she did, it mattered. She understood both worlds, those who lived by the rifle and those who lived by the land. The cowboy noticed how others respected her presence. She was no longer the rescued one. She was a partner in decisions, a protector of balance. He felt pride but also humility. Untying ropes had been simple. Helping someone reclaim agency required patience and restraint. Peace held through one full season. Crops grew. Trade passed through without incident. The child learned to read from worn books and to ride from the saddle. Laughter returned to the ranch, soft at first, then unguarded. But the woman never forgot the rock in the sun. She taught her daughter why freedom must be defended with wisdom, not rage. She taught her that strength could be quiet and still unyielding. The cowboy listened to these lessons too, realizing they were meant for him as much as the child. The final test came without warning. A group arrived claiming official backing. Papers waved like weapons. They demanded removal, relocation, order. The old arguments dressed in new language. This time the response was different. Neighbors arrived. Witnesses stood forward. Stories were told aloud. The woman spoke last. She did not accuse. She described facts. What cruelty looked like, what justice required. Her words carried weight because they were lived, not rehearsed. The officials saw the numbers, the unity, the cost of forcing compliance. They withdrew quietly, leaving uncertainty behind, but no chains. After they left, the land seemed to exhale. The woman felt something loosen inside her chest that had been tight for years. She had survived, resisted, and now remained by choice. The cowboy removed his hat, not in victory but in respect, for her, for the people who stood with them, for a future that had not existed before. The child ran across the field, fearless, calling both of them back to the house. In that sound was everything the desert had once tried to take. Time did what conflict could not. It healed. The ranch became a place known not for defiance, but for fairness. Stories. Some remembered the woman tied to a rock. Others only knew her as someone who helped them find water or work. She accepted both. Identity, she learned, did not need to be frozen in pain. It could grow. The cowboy understood this too. His past no longer defined his isolation. It informed his responsibility. Years later, when the child asked why they stayed instead of running, the woman answered simply, because someone chose to act when it mattered. Because courage can be shared. Because freedom is not given once, it is practiced every day. The cowboy listened from the doorway, realizing the rescue had never been the story's end. It had been the beginning of a life shaped by choice, respect, and the quiet. Power of standing together when the sun was at its hottest, and walking away was easier. The years that followed softened the land and the people who lived on it. The ranch became a place where fear no longer ruled decisions. The Apache woman walked the fields freely, her past no longer a shadow but a lesson. She taught her daughter strength without hatred, courage without cruelty. The child grew into a young woman who understood both worlds and belonged, fully to neither and proudly to both. The cowboy aged too, his hands rough, his voice calmer. He never claimed credit for saving anyone. He said he only did what a man should do when faced with wrong. Together they watched seasons change, knowing peace was never guaranteed, only protected. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the woman looked toward the desert where she had once been left to die. She felt no anger, only resolve. Survival had turned into purpose. What began with ropes and silence ended with choice, dignity, and a future earned the hard way.